5 young men, one freezing night, and a disappearance that even time itself refuses to explain. This wasn't just a vanishing. It was the unraveling of reality in the silent woods of Northern California. Their car was found alone, engine intact, gas in the tank, but no one behind the wheel. No footprints leading away, just a void, an echo. And when one of their bodies eventually surfaced, months later, it only twisted the mystery tighter. What really happened to the Yuba County Five? Let me take you there. But be warned, this story gets darker, stranger, more heartbreaking than anything you've ever heard. It began on February 24, 1978. The 5 Gary Meshas, Bill Sterling, Jack Madruga, Jack Hoot, and Ted Weiher left a basketball game at Chico State University. They were never seen alive again. Days later, their Mercury Montego turned up deep in Plumas National Forest, far off any sane path leading back to Yuba City. The car? Perfect condition. No flat tires, gas in the tank. But the keys were missing. The doors left unlocked, as if they had stepped out for just a moment and disappeared. The landscape was a frozen tomb, snow thick and suffocating. Temperatures plunging well below zero. And of the men, nothing. Not a single print in the snow, no trail, no struggle. Only the whispering silence of the woods. Weeks turned to months. Then came the first horror. Nearly 20 miles from the abandoned car, inside a dilapidated U.S. Forest Service trailer, someone found a body. It was Ted Weiher. His corpse lay on a bed, wrapped in sheets as if by careful hands head to toe, shoeless, his beard grown long. A sign he had lingered for weeks, maybe months, alone. But here's what chilled investigators to the core. Inside that trailer were unopened cans of food, a working propane tank, matches, clothing, everything needed to survive, all untouched. Ted had died surrounded by salvation, but never reached for it. Why? Where were the others? Why had 5 men ended up trapped in the most unforgiving wilds of California? Why had only one body been found? As we peel back the layers of this case, you'll find the questions only multiply. Before the headlines, before the horror, they were just 5 men. They weren't famous. They weren't troubled. They were sons, brothers, loyal friends. Each carried his own burdens, but each was building a life. To help me improve my voice and make future stories even more engaging, I kindly ask you to give this channel a follow and like the video. Your silent support means the world to me. If you have any questions about the characters or creative ideas for the story, please leave a comment below so we can hear from you. Gary Messias, 25, had battled schizophrenia, discharged from the army after his mind betrayed him, but lately he was stable. Medication helped. He was playing sports, planning for a job, laughing again. Jack Madruga, 30, quiet, dependable, never diagnosed but slow to learn, a man who clung to routine like a lifeline. His Mercury Montego his treasure. Bill Sterling, 29, gentle and devout, a soul who visited libraries more than malls. He lived with his parents, and his kindness radiated from every interaction. Jack Hoot, 24, the baby of the group. Learning disabled, yes, but innocent, enthusiastic. A boy in a man's body who loved his friends like family. And Ted Weiher, 32, larger than life, friendly, joyful, always ready to help, especially at the Special Olympics. Ted could light up a room just by talking basketball. Together, they were unbreakable. They laughed like brothers, protected each other, believed in each other in a way the world often failed to do. Weekends meant piling into Jack's car. Snacks, games, movies. Their bond was pure, their joy simple. The world might not have always welcomed them, but in that car, on those roads, they belonged. Their families watched with pride, saw the growth, saw the independence. These weren't careless men. They were reliable. They were loved, They were doing everything right. And February 24th? It was supposed to be just another good day. They were headed north to Chico to catch a college basketball game. The very next day was their Special Olympics tournament. Ted had ironed his uniform. Bill had spoken about winning. They were excited, alive. They left home smiling. They never came back. No arguments. No warnings, just gone. By the next morning, joy had turned to panic. These men didn't break routine. They didn't disappear. Not without calling, not without reason. What happened next would drag 5 families and one small town into a nightmare that still hasn't ended. For them, weekends were sacred. Rituals wrapped in trust and laughter. The same car, the same friends, the same rhythms that made life make sense. Piling into Jack's Mercury Montego, grabbing snacks, heading to a game or the movies. Together, they were untouchable, unshakable, a fortress of friendship few outsiders understood. They looked out for each other in the kind of way you only see in war stories or childhood bonds that never dissolve. Protecting, cheering, laughing at inside jokes only they could decipher. And their families? They watched with pride, hearts full. These boys were becoming men, not rebels, not risks, but steady, good-hearted souls. February 24th, 1978, was supposed to be another safe, ordinary, wonderful day, but fate had other plans. That morning, the 5 friends were electric with excitement. They were headed to Chico State University 50 miles north to watch a college basketball game. But more importantly, the next day was their own moment, a long-awaited Special Olympics tournament they had trained for, dreamed of. Ted had neatly laid out his Gateway Gator uniform the night before, creased, folded, ready. Bill had told his parents with shining eyes that he could see himself winning a medal. Their coaches had faith. Their families had joy. Hope was thick in the air. They left in the early evening, all smiles. 5 friends. 1 Mercury Montego, their spirits light and skyward. They'd watch the game, grab some snacks, and be back early enough to rest for the big day. There were no warnings, no alarms, no arguments, no shadows, just warmth, joy, and a car rolling into the night. But out there, somewhere between Chico and home, something shifted. Something went wrong. And 5 families would soon fall into a nightmare more terrifying than they could ever imagine. The basketball game at Chico ended around 10 p.m. The boys lingered a bit, smiling, relaxed, on their way home. They stopped at Bear's Market, a small convenience store tucked near the edge of town. They bought pies, chocolate milk, candy, soda, a nightcap for the ride home. The store clerk would later recall them perfectly. They were happy, she said, just normal boys. At around 10:30 p.m., they drove off into the night, headed home. At least that's what everyone believed, but they never returned. Morning came like a punch to the chest. When the boys didn't show up, when they missed the tournament, their families knew. This wasn't youthful wandering. This wasn't forgetfulness. Something had happened. And whatever it wasn't good. Phones rang. Calls were made. Worry escalated into panic. These weren't men who broke patterns. These weren't men who skipped plans. The Special Olympics wasn't just an event. It was a milestone. They were proud of that game. They were going to shine. And now they were gone. The police got involved fast. Friends and family scoured the highways. Flyers went up. Questions flew. The entire community was pulled into the hunt for 5 boys who had vanished without reason, without trace. Within days, a chilling clue would surface, one that only deepened the mystery. But as of that quiet morning after the game, all anyone had was fear. Fear of what the forest might be hiding. Fear of what the silence was saying. Fear that the night had swallowed 5 beautiful souls and wasn't giving them back. The search began like all hopeful searches do, with urgency, flashlights, and the unshakable belief that someone must have seen something. But hope fades fast when the woods answer with silence. It didn't take long to find the car. The Mercury Montego sat abandoned on a lonely, winding mountain road, deep in Plumas National Forest, 70 miles off their expected route. The location made no sense. It wasn't on the way home. It wasn't near anything. Just snow, trees, and the unsettling quiet of isolation. The car's condition chilled investigators. The doors were unlocked, one window rolled down, no damage, no signs of distress. The keys were missing, but the car, it was fine, not stuck. No flat tires. It could have been turned around and driven out easily. The snacks the boys had bought were still there half-eaten, just sitting on the seats like someone had stepped out for a moment. But there were no footprints, no trails, only a few faint impressions in the snow soon, erased by fresh flurries. It was as though the car had simply appeared there, out of thin air. And Jack Madruga, he would never have taken that road. He hated the cold. He hated the woods. Everyone who knew him said he wouldn't drive up a snowy mountain trail voluntarily, especially not at night. So why was his car there? More frightening still, the road didn't go anywhere. It only led deeper into the forest. Had they gotten lost? Had someone tricked them? Threatened them? Had something broken their trust, their logic, and made them leave the one warm, safe place they had? Theories bloomed as quickly as panic. Helicopters scanned the treetops. Dogs sniffed through underbrush. Dozens of volunteers combed the snow, calling names into the wind that didn't echo back. But there was nothing. No clothes, no tracks, no screams, no evidence. Just 5 boys who had vanished like mist. Police retraced every step. They interviewed gas stations. They asked families again and again, could they have had a reason to go up that road? No. None of them were outdoorsmen. None of them would wander off into the mountains by choice, especially not on a freezing February night. Then came a new thread. A local man stepped forward with a strange story. He claimed to have seen 5 figures near the car that night, people who might have matched the boy's description. But when pressed for details, his story blurred. He couldn't confirm it was them. He wasn't even sure what night it had been. Still, it was something. Then the phone rang. An anonymous call came into police cryptic, whispering. A voice told them where they might find the boys, a trailer in a remote stretch. A clue too specific to ignore. Excited and terrified, investigators rushed to the area. Nothing. Another dead end. Another punch to the family's chests. Rumors grew darker. Some whispered of kidnapping. Others of a cult or drugs. Something foul that had snatched them off the road. Some pointed fingers at Gary Macias, whose schizophrenia had been stable. Yes, but who had a history? Had he snapped? Had he led the others into danger? But there was no sign of violence, no blood, no damage, no fight, and the car? It could have been driven out easily. When police tested it, the engine turned over right away. There was gas in the tank, no mechanical problems. Nothing to explain why it had been left. So why had they left it? Why walk away from safety? Why head into the snow-covered woods in the dead of night? The officers were exhausted and haunted, because nothing made sense. The families, once fueled by desperation, now sat hollow. Mothers staring into empty yards. Fathers coming home with boots wet from useless searches. They had no bodies, no graves. Just silence, until June. And what June brought would make the questions even worse. June 4th, 1978. The forest, quiet for months, finally gave something back. A group of motorcyclists, just passing through the remote, skeletal heart of Plumas National Forest, stumbled on a sight no one was prepared for. A U.S. Forest Service trailer. Tucked away, forgotten. Inside was death. Lying on a bed, under layers of blankets, was the body of Ted Waher. But it wasn't just that he had died. It was how he died that turned the case from a mystery into a nightmare. He wasn't found curled in fear or collapsed near the door. He was wrapped, carefully, ritualistically, in sheets. Even his head was tucked in, no shoes. His feet were blackened by frostbite, frozen and ruined. His beard was long, wild, grown out over what was estimated to be 8 to 13 weeks. Yes, he had survived that long, survived in a place where he didn't need to die. Because inside the trailer, untouched, were canned foods, heavy winter clothing, matches, a propane tank that worked. Ted had everything he needed, and he used none of it. Not one can was opened, not one match struck, not a flicker of heat. He lay there and slowly wasted away, wrapped as though someone tried to keep him warm or said goodbye. Why? Outside, horror continued to unfold. About 2 miles away, searchers found bones, scattered. Bleached, picked clean by animals. It was Jack Hoot. Nearby, they uncovered clothing scraps and then skeletal remains, positively identified as Bill Sterling and Jack Madruga. All three had perished out in the open. No cover, no shelter. Just snow and trees and something they were running from. Or toward. It was chaos made into death. Only Ted had made it to the trailer. Only Ted had lain down to die, surrounded by salvation. But that wasn't the final twist. Inside the trailer, they found a pair of shoes. Not Ted's, Gary Macise's. They didn't find Gary, not then, not ever. But his shoes, proof he'd made it to the trailer, were left behind. Even more chilling, Ted was wearing Gary's shoes. Did Gary give them to him before leaving? Or did Gary leave after Ted died? And where did he go? Theories spiraled. Some believed Gary had gone for help. Others whispered of conflict, of something desperate unraveling among friends. Madness, hunger, cold. Did survival instincts twist loyalty into something darker? Had Gary escaped? Or become something else? What's certain is this: Ted Weher starved to death next to shelves of food, and no one can say why. Investigators were dumbfounded. The broken window on the trailer suggested they had broken in. They knew food and warmth were there. But why didn't they use it? Why didn't they light the propane? Why didn't they try to live? All of it pointed to something deeper than mere confusion. Something chilling, a fear so profound it overrode instinct. And still no sign of Gary. The forest refused to give him back. The families were already broken. This cool second chapter shattered what was left. No one had imagined it ending like this. Not miles from the car. Not in a trailer stocked with life-saving supplies. Not in silence and starvation and decay. They had been so close to rescue. So close to life. And yet they died slowly. Alone. Afraid. Ted's death, especially, felt like a scream muffled in snow. It made no sense. It still doesn't. What happened between the car and the trailer? Why split up? Why not return? Why was the trailer not used as sanctuary, but as a tomb? And where was Gary? These weren't just the final moments of a failed survival. They were riddles, drenched in frost and grief. The case wasn't just a disappearance anymore. It was something darker, something cursed. Something that even the trees, even the snow, seemed desperate to keep hidden. 4 bodies. 1 missing, and a silence that howled louder than any scream. With the discoveries came speculation, hope twisted into theory. The world watched and whispered. What really happened to the Yuba County Five? The official theory came fast too fast, some thought. Authorities said the men had gotten lost. Turned around after the basketball game, driven into the mountains by mistake. Cold, confused, they abandoned the car and wandered into the forest. It was a clean answer, but it didn't sit right with anyone who truly knew them. These 5 were cautious, deliberate, structured. Jack Madruga, especially, was meticulous. His Mercury Montego was his pride. He wouldn't have driven it up a snowy, remote road, especially not in the dark, especially not in winter. And even if they had gotten lost, why go forward? Why not turn around? Why walk 20 miles into a frozen forest with no food, no supplies, no plan? And then there was Ted wrapped in blankets inside a trailer stocked with food and propane. He didn't even open a single can. Didn't light a single flame. He died with salvation all around him. It made no sense. Theories began to bloom like bruises. Some said it was foul play, that someone forced them off the road. Maybe they witnessed something they were never meant to see. A drug operation? A cult? A predator in the woods? Then came the lodgekeeper. He claimed that on the night the boys vanished, he'd seen headlights in the distance, heard whistles, shouting. But by the time he checked, the sounds were gone. Ghosts in the trees. Was it the boys calling for help? Or was someone chasing them? Some theorized they had been forced into the wilderness by something they feared more than the cold. But who or what would make 5 men flee deeper into death? Others tried to make sense of it by pointing to Gary Macias. He was the outlier. He had a history of schizophrenia. He'd once been violent long ago, before medication, before the group. Was it possible he'd snapped, had a psychotic break? Led his friends into the woods? There was no proof, and those who loved him dismissed the idea. Gary had been doing well. He was steady, hopeful, excited about the tournament. He loved those boys. He wouldn't have hurt them. But his absence still loomed like a phantom. His shoes were found in the trailer, yet he was not. Some believed he died and simply wasn't found. Others whispered darker things. Did he survive? Did he watch the others die? Did he walk off into the wilderness and live? Was he still out there? Hidden? Changed? Gary's disappearance became the riddle inside the riddle. The last page torn from the book, the facts refused to settle. They twisted, shifted. If they were lost, why go deeper? If they were running from what? If there was foul play, where were the wounds? Police found nothing. No blood, no sign of violence. The car, the trailer, the woods clean. The case grew cold and colder. Time passed. Families aged, but the pain did not fade. This wasn't just a tragedy. It was a wound that refused to heal. A haunting that never left. Yuba County was never the same. A sleepy corner of Northern California now forever tied to one of the most disturbing mysteries in true crime history. More than 4 decades later, people still return to the mountain. They leave flowers, trinkets, notes. They hike the route the boys likely took. They whisper their names to the trees. Modern tools, DNA testing, ground-penetrating radar, have tried to uncover the truth. But the forest stays silent. Ted's mother still leaves flowers at the trailer. Jerry's sister still joins cold case forums. Some families cling to hope. Others have made peace. But no one has forgotten. The story resurfaces year after year in podcasts, articles, Reddit threads. Everyone has a theory. No one has a solution. Unanswered. Why abandon a working car? Why trek into a freezing forest? Why die next to food and warmth? Why leave behind the only place of shelter? And what happened to Gary Macias? Did he vanish into the woods? Or into something far stranger? The Yuba County Five are more than a case. They are a parable, a warning, a question that refuses to die. They are the ghosts of logic's shadows where reason collapses. And until someone finds the missing pieces, they will remain exactly that, missing,